So at Salthaven, we're all about wildlife conservation, but what's the point of saving wildlife if they don't have a healthy environment to live in? Hi, I'm Kathy Mueller, host of Wild About Wildlife, and my guest today is on a quest to ensure that lands are being preserved to sustain wildlife. So welcome, Lily Vong from Thames Talbot Land Trust.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for having me on this amazing podcast.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated to learn about Thames Talbot Land Trust. So let's start there. And what is your organization all about?
Well, great first question. Thames Talbot Land Trust, or just TTLT, we're a land trust. So we're one of over 30 different land trusts across the province of Ontario. And our mission is to protect, restore, and nurture the natural environment in our focus area. So for us, we work in 4 different counties across the region. We work in Perth, Elgin, Middlesex, and Oxford County. And so if you were to drop a pinpoint in the middle of the city of London and draw about an hour's radius outside of the city, that's about the area that we focus our conservation efforts on. We currently have over 28 nature reserves, which is quite a big number. It's a lot to manage and steward, but we love every single one of them. And of the 28, it encompasses over 2,300 acres of land that we steward every year. And on those lands, we actually have over 80 different species at risk that we try to manage and protect and ensure that they have the habitat that they need to thrive and continue their populations. But we also protect a number of different habitat types. So it includes wetlands, interior forests, and also prairie remnants, which are really rare in southwestern Ontario. And like I mentioned, we are one of over 30 different land trusts in Ontario, and of all the land trusts in the province have very similar missions, which is to protect the natural landscapes in our focus area. And that's mainly to ensure that the wild places that we have right now can continue to stay wild for future generations to enjoy. And a lot of folks may wonder, what we look for to protect these natural places. And we want to protect them for a lot of different reasons, whether it be recreational, so that people have places to hike and appreciate nature, do some bird watching, but also for cultural significance, so that people have a community space to go to reconnect with nature and with people, and ensure that these lands are being preserved for its natural integrity and that we can use them continually with respect. Some folks may not be aware, but all land trusts, so including TTLT, we're nonprofit, so we're a charity as well. So a lot of our work is governed by a board of directors who are volunteers who are also very passionate about land conservation. And we rely very heavily on grants, donations to do the work that we do. So some of those funding streams might come from federal or provincial streams that would be really difficult for us if we didn't have that financial support to actually secure the lands that we want to protect for the future. So it's a pretty unique area of work, but it is very necessary to ensure that, like I said, the wild places that we have can continue to provide those services for the wildlife, but also for humans as well.
You touched on a whole bunch of topics there that I wanted to dive into a little bit more. So, one of the questions that I had was just because the land is designated as permanently protected, that doesn't mean that it's off limits to people.
Yeah, so as much as we would like to protect every single piece of landscape out there, I we have to be a bit strategic about where we focus our time and our energy and our finances to ensure that we're protecting the most critical habitats in our area of work. As there are times where we may overlap with another land trust that's adjacent to us and partner with them to work on protecting a piece of land that kind of sits within both of our regions, but we do have something called a land securement strategy, which we rank different priority parcels through. And so if we were to get a phone call from a landholder who was interested in protecting their lands, we would essentially have to screen them through this criteria guideline to ensure that it meets certain checkpoints on our list. But if you can picture it, it's essentially a big map of our focus area, so for the 4 counties that we work in. And every single parcel has a ranking or a color code to it. And that's kind of how we are able to quickly glance at it and see if it's something that's of importance for us to protect. When we are looking at a piece of land that we are interested in, or if someone approached us with their lands, we would essentially have to check off certain items to make sure it meets criteria. So, one of those criteria items would be if it's near proximity to current TTLT lands or nature reserves, because our main goal is to protect habitats and establish healthy swaths of corridors for wildlife movements. So even if it's not adjacent to TTLT lands, if it's adjacent to other conservation area lands or protected woodlots, that adds, extra points to the scoring of that area. A lot of people will ask us, what size of land are you interested in? Will my property be big enough for what you guys are looking for? And it's not really an easy answer because every piece of land is different. So we like to say quality over quantity, because even if it might be a smaller 1 acre piece of land, if it has important wildlife habitat on it, it is something potentially worth pursuing for us. And since we work in southwestern Ontario, it is quite a challenging landscape to do so because the land down here is so expensive compared to
Mm,
if you were to buy land, say, in northern Ontario.
yeah.
And so it is really tricky for us sometimes to fundraise and compare our projects and have them aligned with funding streams that may prioritize larger swaths of lands for less money. In those situations, again, we always say it depends on what you have, but don't be shy if you have something smaller. Because again, if it has those critical wildlife habitats and it has rare species, we would be all in for that. We look for certain criteria. So if it has provincially significant wetlands, if it's an ANSI, rare species, rare habitats, those all, make our eyes get really big and we get really excited to go on the landscape. And a lot of our securement work is supported by a committee that we have called our Land Securement Committee. And it's a group of volunteers who are very, very passionate about land conservation, and they assist staff in ranking these sites. And if we're interested in pursuing, we'll conduct a site visit, and that's the opportunity for landholders to give us a tour of this where they live or where they have enjoyed for the last few years or decades. And it's a really great time for us to kind of frolic around and see, what we could potentially work with.
So, what does it mean when land is designated as permanently protected? Say that that landowner has come to you, you've done the process, you agree, yes, this land will be permanently protected. Does it mean then that people are not? I guess this would apply more to a public piece of land, but that people are not allowed to access it once it's permanently protected.
So, not necessarily. Some of our nature reserves are open and accessible for the public to enjoy, but the majority of our lands are closed off to the public. And it may be because they are the donor's wishes to have it protected and kind of not, they don't want the integrity of the landscape to be affected by external sources. So, even if there are trails on the site, there are opportunities for the spread of invasive species, trespassing, sometimes, garbage and vandalism that could degrade the natural area. And so it takes a lot of staff resources to go out and manage all of those nature reserves. And we are a small team. We only have about 11 staff right now. So, yeah, as much as we would like to be able to let people enjoy all those places, we are a bit selective in what we would like people to actually see on the landscape.
Yeah, I guess it's finding that fine balance, right? You want people
Hmm.
to be able to enjoy and appreciate and help get involved in land conservation. But if they don't have access to it, then it's hard to get that excitement, right? That passion about it if they're not able to see firsthand the benefit of preserving land. So you mentioned earlier the amount of land that Thames Talbot Land Trust has been able to protect over the years. Want to give us that figure again, and then and maybe talk about a couple of those spaces and what makes them so special.
For sure. So it was 28 nature reserves, which span over 2,300 acres. And it feels like every year we are adding to that list. Even this year, we closed on already 2 nature reserves, and the number is ramping up pretty quickly. And we believe it might just be a generational change. So a lot of folks who own land right now are getting to that point where they're retiring, and they're trying to figure out what they want to do with the lands that they've enjoyed. And maybe their children aren't interested in taking it over. And so we're getting a lot of phone calls, more than usual, from folks who are interested in protecting the lands that they love.
Yeah.
I would love to highlight a couple nature reserves,
Yeah, that'd be
if
great.
you will. Yeah, yeah. So I think one of the biggest ones that folks know that about TTLT is Hawkliffe Woods. Hawkliffe Woods is just about 15 minutes south of St. Thomas, 10 minutes east of Port Stanley, and we actually acquired Hawkliffe back in 2016. It's about 230 acres of interior forest, ravine, and meadow habitat, and it's all along the Lake Erie shoreline, which makes it a really unique and biodiverse area. And we actually just last week celebrated the expansion project of Hawkliffe Woods, where we added an additional 74 acres of meadow habitat onto Hawkliffe. So Hawkliffe just got way bigger, which is a really exciting accomplishment for us. And a lot of people know Hawkliffe really because of its hawk biodiversity. So it's Hawkliffe is renowned internationally as a hawk watch destination. Some people might not know this about Hawkliffe Woods, but it actually contains one of the largest remaining deep interior forests in Elgin County, and it's situated along a migratory pathway for birds, but also the beautiful monarch butterfly that everyone is obsessed about.
Yeah, yeah.
It has PSWs, or provincially significant wetlands, and it's also an ANSI, which is an area of natural and scientific interest. And there are some pretty neat things that you can see when you're at Hawkliffe. There is a Osmond's Community Wildflower Garden at the end of Hawkliffe Road that people are welcome to go and look at the beautiful plants that we've put into the garden. And what's really unique about that garden is it's kind of like a demonstration garden. So once the seed actually, or once the flowers actually start to seed in the fall, people are welcome to go there and collect the seeds for themselves and plant it in their home or in
Oh,
their
that's
garden.
great.
Yeah, so it's a bit interactive. There's a lot of neat species there that, you might have a bit of difficulty finding in your local nursery. So it's a really great opportunity for folks to go read the signs, learn about the different plants that they could potentially grow in their backyards and provide that wildlife habitat for the insects and of course for the monarchs. The other one is Joni's Woods. This one is up in Thetford, so North Middlesex area, closer to the Lambton shores. And it's actually our biggest nature reserve. We acquired it in 2007. And do you want to guess how big it is?
Oh my gosh, it would be horrible at guessing.
That's okay. I think I would too. It's 364 acres
Oh my gosh.
of, yeah, it's a huge, huge nature reserve. It's our biggest one, and it actually contains our longest public trail system, which is about 9 kilometers long. So you can really get lost at Joni's Woods. And it contains one of the most heavily forested areas in Middlesex County, as well as it's part of the Asaba River Life and Sea. So it's a little bit rugged, a little bit inaccessible, but if you are really looking for a place where you could be in deep interior forest and experience, nature at its finest, and maybe remove yourself from a little bit of city life, then I would say Joni's Woods is the place for you to explore.
Yeah, and then like you mentioned earlier about managing the lands that you acquire. What does that involve? You talked about planting seeds and plants and that. What else is involved in actually managing? You just don't let the land be and be its natural self.
Since we work in southwestern Ontario, no piece of land that we acquire and protect is pristine and in its, natural state. There's always some kind of management work that needs to be performed to ensure that the site is, reaching its natural integrity to the point where it can still provide those services for the species that we're trying to protect. So with every nature reserve, we create a PMP, or property management plan, which is essentially a guide for us and our stewardship team to perform management work and identify what the threats are, what the hazards are on the landscape, so that we can really plan out what it is that we need to do to ensure that the site stays functioning well as a nature reserve. So
Yeah.
some of that work may include maintaining the trails for public access if there are already existing trails. Invasive species removal, honestly, is a full-time job. Every nature reserve we get, there's Phragmites, garlic mustard, buckthorn, all the good stuff. And so if we ever get a nature reserve that doesn't have any, it's honestly a dream.
Yeah.
And we also do a lot of monitoring and surveying. So if we know that there's historical records of rare species, we will spend a lot of time as well looking for those populations to make sure that we have, up to date records. We have a fantastic stewardship team who somehow are really, really good at finding rare species. And they always come back to the office saying, guess what? I found another thing. I'm like, something that we haven't found before. And it's
Wow.
always a really, yeah, neat opportunity for them to explore these, small wild places in southwestern Ontario, but also be able to commit their time in managing the nature reserves. And it's tough work. It's physically, very exhausting work to be out in a nature reserve, especially in conditions like this summer where it's been heat wave after heat wave. But we, like a lot of land trusts, we say we're in the forever business. So the lands that we protect is going to be protected forever, and we commit ourselves to managing them well. And so yeah, we go out there all the time and we try our best to ensure that it's being held to the standard that meets conservation standards, but also whatever we may have promised to the landowner as well. If they wanted certain areas managed or maintained, we commit ourselves to that as well.
I hike the Bruce Trail quite often. And I've noticed this year, the section that I hike, at the beginning of it, they have one of those devices that they're encouraging people to run their foot over it, their shoe over it,
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
basically don't bring anything in and don't take anything
Hmm.
out, sort of thing. Do you guys have those? You can picture what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, the boot brush.
Cleaning your boot kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen them on different trails for sure. We don't have any of those yet on our nature reserves, but I know it's one of those things on our wish list where it would be great to have at some of our public trails, especially the ones in the city where we know we get a lot of people walking through, like at Meadowlily Nature Preserve, just
Yeah.
to have for people to, clean their boots before they hop in their car. But also it's a great educational piece for folks as well to read about what's out there and what we should and shouldn't bring into our natural places.
Right. Sounds like we can put in a good plug there if anybody wants to donate.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know who sources them, but we would love one.
So you're out there and you're protecting these lands, you're managing these lands, and what is the impact of all of that? What is your team observing in terms of biodiversity and the health of the lands?
So, like I mentioned, we do a lot of restoration work on the landscape. So, when we acquire lands, some of them may come with agricultural pieces that may have been farmed. If they have a relationship with the farmer, and we want to continue leasing, that's not a problem at all. We'll continue that relationship. But at times, if we decide not to, we may do some kind of restoration work on the landscape. And that's to expand those edge habitats that is required by a lot of species for foraging, for breeding. A lot of organizations, including ourselves, are doing something called assisted migration. So essentially, with the effects of climate change, and I think a lot of folks know that with climate change, I think we see it right now. It's getting a bit hotter. Every year, conditions are shifting. And so when we are performing restoration work, we try to put that into effect and add species into our sites that we expect to be here in 50 to 100 years. Because the species, the plants, the birds that we know today that are in our area of work, they're going to start shifting more north. And so that it's more suitable for them. So we try to, yeah, prepare our sites as much as we can by introducing species from the northern states so that they start establishing now, so that in 50 years, when we need them, they're already here and adapted to our climate. And like I said, it's not just us that has that in mind. A lot of conservation groups out there have this mindset where we have to prepare the landscape for what it can be or what it will be in the years to come. So It's really great work to be able to experience and see the different species that appear, but it's also a great learning opportunity for us too, because it's something we've never really done a lot of before, but a lot of folks are now, right? Because we do have to prepare our communities for, the effects of good old climate change.
Yeah. And so speaking of climate change, I wanted to talk about that a little bit and how is that impacting your ability to have an impact?
Like I mentioned, it's been a very hot summer, and we have a very, very long list of deliverables that we have to do for every single nature reserve. Our staff health is our priority, and so unfortunately, we do have to delay a lot of our work sometimes because we can't be outside for long periods of time. It's so hot, and some of our work is in interior forest, which is nice because there's a bit of shade.
Yeah.
But again, if we're doing restoration work, we're doing surveying, we're in wetlands, they're standing out there in the heat of the sun. And so it's tricky for us to be able to coordinate this every year because it's so unpredictable. One year it might be okay where we can go out and do our monitoring and surveying, but there may be times where we have to adjust and be flexible.
Yeah, and now Thames Talbot Land Trust, you're marking 25 years this year, so congratulations on
Hmm.
that. That's the big
Yeah.
anniversary. And you mentioned earlier about adding new land to Hot Cliff. So how else are you celebrating this big anniversary?
Yeah, so it's a big one, and we're not letting it just fly on by. We're going to really soak it in and enjoy every moment of it, as we should. We got these new T-shirts for some of
Awesome.
our staff and our volunteers to really commemorate the 25th anniversary. But we're going to take the time to really celebrate our volunteers, our donors for supporting us and helping us meet milestones, and also for the partners who we've collaborated with. We'll be having a banquet this fall where our staff and our volunteers and our supporters can have a night to celebrate and really soak in what we've accomplished over the last 25 years and focus on what we want to achieve. Hopefully, for the next 25 years, we're going to have a guest speaker, John Lowndes. He's the former president and CEO of the Nature Conservancy of Canada.
Yeah, and then how closely do organizations like Thames Talbot Land Trust, how closely do they work with an organization like Salthaven, which is it's also about environmental conservation. Obviously, it's more about wildlife conservation, but how do
Hmm.
you work closely, or do you work closely with organizations like Salthaven?
Yeah, we work a lot. We work a lot with different organizations. I feel like one of our strong points is our partnership with the many groups out there, whether they be conservation groups, neighborhood community groups. We try our best to provide environmental education as well as hands on opportunities for groups to get outside and be in nature. One relationship that we have that we really, really appreciate is with Friends of London Civic Garden here in the city of London. Like I mentioned, we do a lot of restoration work. And so with those sites, we do a lot of seed collection. Those seeds need to go somewhere to grow so we can actually plant them the following year. And the Friends of London Civic Garden have been excellent in providing greenhouse space for us to be able to actually grow the seeds there so that they have a safe place to establish during their first few years. And then we get them back and we put them into some of our sites, which is, something that, you can't always get a random greenhouse
Yeah, no,
and
exactly,
volunteers to
exactly.
help source that.
Personally, where does your passion for environmental conservation come from? You've been with TTLT for about a year now. So
Hmm.
yeah, where does your passion come from?
Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up in the GTA, just like you, Kathy.
Yeah.
So I wasn't exposed much to nature. My parents immigrated to Canada from Vietnam, so they were very much like I think many immigrant parents, protective, and they wanted me inside. And the outside world was very scary. But I was always very curious, and I think like a lot of little girls, I loved animals, and my dream was to be a veterinarian. I wanted to
Mhm.
protect every single animal that I could, and I couldn't stand the idea of animals not having a home. But I always knew that, like the root end of it, if you wanted to protect wildlife, you have to protect their habitat first so that they have a place to really thrive. So that's kind of, where my mindset took me. And I had a really I had a lot of great teachers in school as well that, were in STEM, women in STEM especially, who encouraged me when I was doubtful of entering the field. The environmental field is a little intimidating at times, but it's a really, really small community. And so, yeah, I had some great folks to learn from and listen. And I think also when you're in school, we don't really think about environmental education a lot, but those little field trips that I had, going to the zoo, going to different conservation areas, I think those moments really stuck with me, and really shifted my perspective in this is where I want to be. And yeah, there's nothing else that could compare to it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I remember too, like visiting a marshland or something in my grade eight
Yeah,
class. That absolutely plants a seed, right? And with you,
exactly.
it obviously stuck.
It did.
So with Thames Talbot Land Trust, like any nonprofit, it succeeds in large part because of its volunteer base. And so we're always trying in this podcast to encourage people to get involved. So if people wanted to get involved with Thames Talbot Land Trust, how would they go about it? Is training provided? Do they need to have any experience in environmental conservation? How does all that work?
So, not at all. You can totally be a fresh, unexperienced person to volunteer with TTLT. I think all you need is passion and eagerness to learn. We are so fortunate to have such a huge following. We actually have over 180 active volunteers, which means that over 180 people come out every year to help us with events, who actually sit on boards. We have different committees that, if you are interested in taking on a bigger position, we always welcome people. We have a committee called Land Securement Committee, which I mentioned earlier. We have property management committees if you're interested in more landscape work, management and marketing committee. But we also have land stewards. So if you are someone who just loves hiking and that's it,
Yeah.
being a land steward might be the ideal position for you because your volunteer role would be to hike the trails that we have and then just to report back if a tree fell down and if staff should go out and remove it. So it's a really nice casual opportunity for you to get involved, but
Yeah.
also connect with community folks and other volunteers. And if you're someone who likes to chat, we love having outreach volunteers as well. So people who love to educate the community. We attend a lot of community booths, fairs. So those are always opportunities, again, for people to get involved. And those positions, you'll get to meet our volunteer coordinators. She'll train you up on everything that you need so you have all the fun facts, so that you can help folks learn a little bit more about TTLT.
Yeah, well, I will leave it there for now, but thanks so much, Lily. Like this fascinating conversation. I don't know about our listeners, but I'm energized to get more involved and to learn more
Perfect.
and to do, more to help. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. And I just wanted to mention that if there's anyone out there who has land that is on the fence, they just want to consider or weigh out their options, we are here. And like I said, we're in the forever business. So whether it's me that you're talking to or another staff member, or, in 20 years when you're kind of ready to consider land protection options, just give us a shout and we will be more than happy to have that conversation with you.
Okay, so for anyone listening today, make sure you do check out our show notes because I will include a link to the Thames Talbot Land Trust website there, and it'll have all the information where you can follow up with Lily and her team. And as always, thanks so much for tuning in. I also encourage you to let the wildlife lovers in your circle know about Wildlife. I'm Kathy Mueller. I'll be back next month with a new episode. Take care.